Hold My Hand, a story from two perspectives, written and narrated by Jacob Saul, illustrated by Sonny Layton, and scored by Billy McCormack. Each day starts with the same fiction. The fluffy grass weaved in between my toes, with the bright green tips tickling up to my ankles in the swaying breeze. The golden sun caked us in a comforting warmth you only get on a perfect summer's day. It was just us, along with the bees and the birds, but we always came along as a pair. If something could be too perfect, it was this. I could feel the tingle on the side of my face that comes to surface when you feel someone looking at you. The glow of her smile normally left that impression. I found myself smiling too. It was irresistibly infectious. As I raised my hand towards my head, in turn raising hers, as her fingers slotted between mine like the perfect puzzle pieces. Pressing my lips on her hand, my eyes trailed down her arm. Almost snappingly, the buzz of the bees and the song of the birds drowns out to the rain patting on the window. This is always the worst bit. The heavy eyes labelled as mine don't feel as such. They keep skipping down like a scratched disc every time I get to her neck. I want to see her rosy cheeks and that cheesy grin, but weights pull my eyes back down. I hold on so tight to her hand she could abseil with it. The rain edges louder. This is the part I fear. The cold rushes over my body. Please, I don't want her to go. I know that when I open my eyes it'll be over. I can't lose her. Not again. Like a butterfly fluttering its wings, my eyelids open. She's gone. Again. The warm sun is now replaced with a sterile blue lamp. It almost emits the cold. The blue striped pyjamas flow my line of sight down to my hands. Are these really mine? The loose skin sags around my joints with any sign of colour being completely evacuated a long time ago. There was still some sign of life in them the last time she held them. Opening my palm, the imprints from my nails almost look like deep red open brackets. Suppose that's what happens when you try to hold a hand that isn't there. Sometimes I'll forget she's gone and make 2 cups of tea. 4 sugars, just how she likes it. Sorry, liked it. No wonder her teeth fell out. It's only after I turn around with both mugs in hand I normally realise. One other time I took it all the way back upstairs to treat her to a morning brew, only to open the door to a cold bed. Occasionally, I face the wall and talk to her as if she was behind me. It helps, for a little while. Hello, my love. Long time no see. Both of my eyes relax, fixing onto a point neither here nor there. Everything slows down. My fingers dancing with my wedding ring to ease the anxiety. After all this time, she still gives me butterflies. How have you been without me? I often lose track of who's talking. Did she say that or did I? It's stupid because at the end of the day I'm just talking to myself. In between sentences the room falls as silent as the night before Christmas. Even the cat's purring ceases. I can tell he misses her too. She was a lot more lenient when measuring out his dinner. I'm scared of joining you. I always felt selfish saying that bit. It fills my guts with that deep guilt that steals your appetite. I picture it like a clown car. Sorry, too many clowns inside. Can't fit any food in here. Just as she inhales after pondering my statement, the thin, soft and almost cowardly wheels of the Honda Civic outside don't screech but mildly cough to a halt. Son of the year has arrived. He knows I hate the bloody Honda. Just give me a ride in your convertible, roof down, music blasting, having a whale of a time. I still leave the second pillow out on the bed. I reach over to it and speak softly. Sorry, my love. Speak soon. Glancing over to the clock face, I couldn't quite believe it was already 11:15. Time elapses differently as you age. Not too different to gravity. It's stronger at some points than others. It's odd, though, how we see time. If you cast your mind back to a certain sports day at school, or when you wet yourself in class, it feels like nothing, an abridged story of your life. like folding a piece of paper, then to now. But it misses everything else out, because it doesn't quite feel as recent as when you factor in all the meals you've had, or the washing up since then, let alone how many times you've brushed your teeth. You have to manually populate that into the forefront of your mind, though. It doesn't just automatically appear. Well, if it did, our heads would be the size of hot air balloons. Imagine that. Everyone floating around in the sky like a cartoon character. Would the head solely be the balloon and the basket the rest of the body? Or would it all be in the balloon and the basket would be where you store the baby balloons that can't quite fly yet? Or your dog? I bet the sunsets would look stunning from up there. The dark blue filtering down into the warm, deep red that blends together like a Van Gogh painting. The front door knocked. Well, nearly. He dropped his keys on the mat again. That mat makes me want to faint. A mumbled bollocks swiftly trailing behind. This was my cue. The door's a bit more stiff nowadays. Not a sign of age, just lack of use. I have to bite my tongue to contain the laughter in anticipation. I love this bit. If I could get the bleeding thing to work, I'd wink to a camera right about now. Hello, my dear boy. Oh, for goodness sake, Dad, close the door. Close the bloody door. Good morning to you too. He puts the petrol station wine and tulips on the kitchen counter and spreads his arms across it like he's opening a map. He's facing away from me. A sigh so deep and so pained was all I could have hoped for in his reaction. Dad, would it kill you to wear some trousers? Imagine little old Mabel across the way. If she saw you like that, she'd have a heart attack. Always gets him. He's always great to wind up, as he's always been very serious. As a kid, we told him he had a magical carpet that could fly away, only to wake up the following morning to him having prick-sticked it to the floor and declaring in all sincerity that it couldn't fly because it didn't have a pilot's license. As I head off towards the bedroom to retrieve some trousers, my laugh silences, as I realise we've already exchanged half the words we'll share today. Talkative is an adjective as misplaced on my son as jolly would be on Stalin. I wonder if he knew she hated tulips. The air of the Honda Civic was cold and fusty. It always was first thing in the morning. Not sure how and when it happens, though. I've spent entire nights in my car, and it seems to just suddenly switch like a new area in a video game popping in. After stuffing the wine I won in a raffle last year and a bouquet of tulips onto the back seat, my hands hesitated by the keys in the ignition, as if touching them would be directly putting my hand in an open flame. I hate going back there. It's better out of sight and out of mind as far as I'm concerned. He'll ask me the same questions. You met a woman yet? When will I be a grandfather? The disappointment on his face is soul-crushing. He's sad enough as it is. I at least call him. Tuesday, 5:13 every week. We watch Pointless together over the phone. Enough to say our pleasantries before it starts at 1:15. We don't comment or say anything aloud to each other. It's just comforting to know he's still there. It almost brings me to tears each week in fear that one day that phone will just keep ringing. It's the same as when they finally disconnected Mum's phone. Not that she knew how to use it in the first place. After 3 deep exhales, I turn the key and get set on my way. Arriving outside, I slow down as gently as possible. I don't want him to know I've arrived. I need a moment to compose myself. 43 years old and I'm stressing outside my parents' house like a girl on prom night. The entire car falls silent. Just the ticking of the cooling metal leaves me looking out to the kitchen window in what sounds like clockwork. A timer for when I'll actually get out. Even if she was standing right there, I wouldn't be able to see her. The tears seep into my vision like spilling a cup of tea over a newspaper. After my eyelids act as windscreen wipers, I see my dad by the bedroom window, talking to himself. It breaks my heart all over again. My mind stays in the car, screaming, as my body continues on autopilot towards the door. Finding myself on the welcome mat was too much. I remember the day we bought it in the garden centre. I knocked over a load of plant pots, which, in an unlucky turn of revenge, cut my hand, leading me to bleed everywhere. Nowhere was safe from being stained by my open wound. Dad conveniently passed out with perfect comic timing, while Mum had to sort it all out. She was good like that. I bled too much onto the accompanying doormat stand, which we were then forced to purchase. The whole lot. Everyone was getting doormats for Christmas for the next 3 years, much to Grandma's dismay. It's a tatty old thing by now, and it's jumped from house to house with us ever since. For months Dad had to use the back door as it reminded him too much of the blood. I had my very first kiss on this mat. Still don't think he knows to who. It's all a bit much. My heart starts pounding so fast I can almost feel it leaping out of my throat. I haven't knocked yet. He doesn't know I'm here. I can just turn away and reschedule like last time. The balancing act of the keys gripping onto my finger, like Mufasa did to the cliff, just as the wine bottle embodying Scar nudges them off. Bollocks. I'll just have to pick them up and leave. It's fine. I'll wipe my eyes and... Hello, my dear boy. The door has already swung open and oh no, oh God, please, no, not again. My father, well into his senior years, has a habit which I keep trying to crack. He stands there in a nice shirt, granted, but accompanied by a severe lack of trousers. He finds this funny for some reason. Oh, for goodness sake, Dad, close the door. Close the bloody door. His aged legs almost resemble tracing paper holding together a bag of bones. This is why I can't visit. The view of him alone in this place tears me apart. It took me too long to realise that we think they're the ones watching us grow up, while we're just as much watching them grow old. Good morning to you too, amidst from a sarcastic grin. I stride my way in and towards the kitchen counter, almost dropping everything on the surface as my arms grow weak. With my back turned, I sigh, fighting back the tears. It doesn't sit right being back here without her. At least this way I can picture her with him. Again the autopilot kicks in with my mouth muttering something about the trousers, or lack thereof. I don't care about the trousers. Well, that much anyway. I care about him. I want to sit down with him, make sure he's okay, have a cup of tea and celebrate the fact that we still have each other. But we've never had that relationship. I was a mummy's boy through and through. The difficulty was that I couldn't even tell him I love him. I turn around to him, already headed to put some clothes on. I have the words on the tip of my tongue, pushing, almost screaming to burst their way out. I love you, I shout in my mind as he closes the bedroom door. Scanning the room, it all looks picturesque and tidy upon first glance. It's only when you look closer you see the damage. Suppose that's like asking someone, "Oh hey, how are you?" seeking just a, "Yeah, all right mate," in response. What would happen if you actually stopped in the street and said, "You know what mate, I'm really, really struggling." But they just want the earth to open up and swallow them whole from the social pressure. Because I would. The plants littered around the room are as dry as astronaut food. The colour completely vacant. It's like a time capsule from the day she left. Her shoes by the door, keys in the bowl, and a message on the fridge that reads, "Don't forget to take out the bins. Remember to separate the recycling. Kiss." I suppose for her it was only a regular Wednesday. Or was recycling a Tuesday? Inspecting the note closer, you could see the blob of blue tack keeping it attached and a faint shoe mark. It's certainly not there by mistake. The cat's bowl is still full of food. I think he forgets they're gone too. They didn't last much longer than Mum. Glancing over to the television set, it'd be surprising if this model even has colour. It's that ancient. Seeking the remote, I clocked it pride of place on the mantelpiece under the sun-faded school photo and sports participation trophy. The remote feels like a relic of the past. It should be in a museum. Do they still make the right batteries for these things? It was as dusty as the rest of this place, as out of time as Dad. Oh, how much I hated this car. It's always too warm. Is this what jacket potatoes feel like while they're cooking? Complete with someone on the other side of the glass smiling at you, thinking, job done. Tom helped me into the car, of course. I gritted through the pain. He was courteous and didn't comment on my frailing legs, just as I didn't comment on his balding hair looking like the grass near the goalpost on a school field. He got that from me. After setting off, I sat around, eagerly waiting for something to occupy my thoughts. I wonder if he'll tell me his news today. It'll only be 30 years late. The radio was set to a classical station, of course, but turned right down to 0. He was always very particular and set in his ways. I always thought we should get him tested, but she always protested, saying her boy was perfect the way he was. I can't fault her, really. Just thinking back to that was enough to motivate an unconditional smile. Tom turns and smiles back. I can't explain it because I don't know what he was smiling about, but it was a sweet moment. I think almost in some way it was his way of affirming he's still here. Oh, I love him. In moments it nearly slips out, but the flashbacks of the parade he put on the last time I expressed it haunt me. Nothing has quite hurt more than trying to connect with your son at your wife's funeral and for him to spit it in your face like you'd fed him dirt, in front of the surviving members of friends and distant relatives. "You're not her," ring around the church hall and to some extent still ring in my ears. I don't need an apology. I don't want one. I just can't help but think he, even if for a second, hoped that I'd gone and not her. I don't blame him, because in very specific, certain moments, me too. The water on the windows and newfound sun, which was teasing its way out, left odd streaks of shadows throughout the vehicle. It brought my eyes back down to the radio, set to a station but dialed down. Is this what he normally does when he's by himself? Or is he embarrassed of what he likes? He should know he can show me anything. Wouldn't mind rocking to some Beethoven right about now. Does he change who he is around me? Is it something I've done? Is he as chatty as a radio host to everyone but me? Maybe he talks so much his throat needs a rest when he's with me. He certainly yells at the television enough when we watch that game show he likes. Or more so, I listen. I wonder if he knows I can't get the telly to work. But I still call, just to hear him laugh. I turn my head slightly, not to raise suspicion, but to look at him. My son. This boy who I raised into a man, not even 3 feet away. I look at the slight outbreak of eczema behind his ear, the small patch of beard he missed when shaving. I look at him and see her. The same eyes, ears, and cute button nose, as well as the rosiest cheeks. I find my eyes closing even though I'm still awake in here. Hello? Body, respond please. It's like when Tom bought me that computer that kept crashing. This tends to happen when I leave the house. It all gets a bit much, and I need a bit of a lie down. Luckily I can have a kip. Got another 30 minutes to go. Why couldn't she be buried closer to me? She feels distant enough as it is. After getting Dad into the car, it was a pleasant enough drive. I could feel him looking at my hair. He was polite and didn't comment on it, but I couldn't help but think of how ghoulish his legs had become. Away into the journey he turned and smiled at me. I felt a wave of affirmation rush over as I knew bringing the Honda was a wise choice. I smiled back. It was Mum who loved a sports car. I wonder why he doesn't. The journey was fine. I got lost in my thoughts. My body seemed to take over at points as I experienced the world from almost a third perspective. It happens more often than I'd like to admit, but it just leaves me headed in the right direction. Arriving at where Mum's buried always hits me like a thud in the chest that spreads throughout my entire body in a matter of seconds. I tried to come up once a week, in my lunch break on Wednesdays, and tell her what happened on Pointless the night before. She helped me through a lot. It was all great mums do. When I was young, I was diagnosed with something that I still can't quite pronounce, and it had a profound effect on me. Telling what was essentially a child that at any minute they could drop down and die leaves you pretty vacant. At first, the feeling of panic was overbearing, and tears flooded my room, but she always came in to pull the plug and subside the 10-foot waves. One time Dad came in, but I kept screaming for Mum. I still need to apologise for that. The car jolted to a halt when we arrived, but even that didn't wake him. It was nice, revelling in this silence, which was scored by his snoring. I never knew a human being could inhale so much air. The comfort of just having him there eased the hurt, at least a bit. The thick tiles of the path jolted Dad around like a rag doll on each crevice and bump as they seemed to have been placed by someone who got bored halfway through. I looked at his neck and his hands as he bobbed along, and there was nothing holding him together. I could almost see right through him. I think even he sensed that we slowed down as we got closer to her. You can see it coming a mile off, as we were lucky enough to be right by a bench. As soon as you enter the grounds, there's a visual pinpoint of where to head, which is in some ways nice, but others feels like an instant dark cloud that never lets you break free. My hands automatically went to swing his legs out, before he protested. I'm not completely useless yet. I can walk. He stood up, walked 2 paces to the bench, but turned around too soon. He saw her name carved into the stone with the 2 dates beneath. The wind had vanished from his sails. He stood, motionless, no response. Like that crap computer I meant to throw away but Dad thought I'd gifted to him. It's odd yet beautiful how memories like that have a habit of creeping up on you and making you laugh. Unfortunately, this was not the most opportune moment for it. A laugh seeps out of my throat and snaps Dad back into action. He looks almost like a confused puppy before placing the tulips I'd given him on the grave and retreating to the bench. I try folding the wheelchair shut, but it doesn't budge. There's a small latch at the back, he mumbles. It collapses like a crisp packet. You'd know that if you visited, he said with such sincerity in his voice. A silence held, shared. I can't blame him. Can you neglect a parent like you can a child? My eyes stay stationed down. I feel guilty for how I treated him. It felt like something that could just be dealt with later and put on hold, just minimising the tab. After thinking for a number of minutes, I realised I hadn't said a single word. The silence was still present. It's like he served, but no one else was there to play. Do you visit her without me? He serves again, and the tennis ball hits me in the chest, leaving a gaping hole. How could I be so selfish? Thoughts rushed through my mind at 1,000,000 miles an hour before I responded how anyone else would. No. He finds a point in between me and the gravestone, still avoiding eye contact. You can come see her without me, you know. At some point you'll be visiting the both of us. It's only now I notice the space for another name on the stone. It's like my eyes opened and suddenly everything made sense in the most painful way. I'm not ready to lose him too. At the funeral, the priest said he was with her in her final moments. That always scared me. How'd he know the right thing to say? If he even said the right thing at all. How would he hold it together? He wasn't the crying type. How was she? Was it peaceful? It's only now my ears nudged me on the shoulder to tell me I just said that out loud. But which parts, and how much of it came out? He turned to face me, but looked like he regretted it instantly, so continued to face front. He'd take a deep breath, ponder on it, and then exhale with nothing said. I could see him fighting back the tears. Yes, I was with your mother when she passed. I held her hand when it, we told each other we loved them, and she said how much you meant to her, before the tight grip on my hand weakened as she smiled and drew her last breath. The compression of everything, burying it all down to the ground, 6 feet under like it didn't exist, bubbles up in a single instant. Thank you, I blubber out. I couldn't quite make out Dad's reaction, as everything looked like a before photo in a glasses advert. Hey, don't you dare. Thank me. He puts his skeletal hand on my shoulder. I almost feel like a child again. The washed-out view of the world hides his wrinkles and laughter lines, and for now, he looks like my dad again, not an echo. Dad said something that from the tone sounded comforting. I couldn't actually hear what was said, let alone my reply. I just felt the bass of my voice bounce around my chest. Sorry, I couldn't come to the phone right now. I was having a breakdown, so if you could leave a message and I'll be right back. It was fun bobbing around on the inconsistent tiles. I felt like a child speaking into a fan as I jumped here, there, and everywhere. I couldn't see the fine details in the wood, but could definitely make out the shape of the bench, the destination, both hers and mine, if given enough time. The tulips kept wanting to be shaken out of my hands. I knew the second I placed them down I'd have to share a little grin with her, knowing full well she'd be rolling her eyes. It always feels surreal seeing her name in the stone. I get flashes of the drunken wine nights and the petty fights. I go to tell Tom and to reminisce, but the thoughts of her wearing just an apron while baking are all that flash through my head. Best keep that to myself. They were good buns, though. Seeing her as more than just a name on a stone wasn't difficult. But for all her neighbours, of which she now spends eternity with, they were just that. Trying to attribute people to the stones was a challenge. I wonder how many people in here were a barman or a lawyer, or those that even found love. I wonder how many people have been forgotten. It's like the way you feel embarrassed about all the small things you've done, even down to the awkward pauses in conversation when speaking to someone you fancied. Chances are they've probably forgotten about you, let alone that moment. So live a little. Don't be so worried about what people think, because you're the only one that cares if you're wearing the same shirt as yesterday. Tom's laugh brings me back to where I am, placing the tulips down, replacing the others. Not that those are doing too bad, though. They feel more recent than when I've been here last. The clink of stubborn metal sounds all too familiar. A classic mistake. There's a latch at the back. You know how to collapse the wheelchair if he visited more often. Why am I keeping this remark to myself? It's not harsh, it's honest. So I let the little bird out of the cage. It is how I feel, after all. The silence permeates like a bad fart in a lift of colleagues. Shit, maybe I shouldn't have said anything. I think back to the flowers. They're too recent. Unless she led a secret double life, who else would be visiting her? I thought him and I only came together. The curiosity wins me over. Do you visit her without me? I already knew the answer. I just wanted him to say it. I have no issue with him being here. It's brilliant. But I'm still here. Hello, can you see me? Can you hear me? No, he replies. I knew he was lying, but it was comforting all the same. There was something nice in the fact that even though it was a fallacy, he needed me to be here just as I couldn't be here without him. It's odd what we tell ourselves to feel better. Gesturing my hand out on my leg, I want him to reach out and hold it. I don't know if he even registers it's there. You can come see her without me, you know. At some point you'll be visiting the both of us. If there's anything I want for him, it's not to feel guilty that he needs his mum, no matter what I tell myself. Retreating my hand, mid-thought, he interrupts me. At the funeral the priest said you were with her in her final moments. How was she? Was it peaceful? The question I'd been dreading. I can't tell him, surely. How do you tell your child that his mother passed away scared and crying? It was the longest I'd ever held someone's hand, let alone hers. With a sharp intake of cold air, I turned to look him in the eyes. It was too much. I can't. I think back to what she said to me when his childhood dog was put down. Sometimes it's better to tell people what they want to hear, as long as it's not hurting them. Sometimes the truth's too much. You need a little fiction. She gave a little grin and a wink as she said it, that even reassured me. I didn't even like the dog that much. What she said always stuck with me, though. Wise woman was my wife. Couldn't be too smart if she stuck with me, though. Her eyes failed first. Everything went black. So for 10 minutes she had me looking in the mirror describing my face. I was never much of an author. Left all the creative things to her. She was adamant that wherever she was going, she wouldn't forget me. How could I forget you? Describe your smile one last time. I love your dimples. She was staying brave for me. Well, at first. My hand almost popped, she held it so tight. It's almost unbearable recalling the whole conversation, as it was mainly said through tears. Honestly couldn't tell you if it lasted 5 minutes or 3 hours. Any time with her had the magical habit of slipping away. There never seemed to be enough of it. As different parts of her body shut down like departments in a store, we said our final goodbyes. She shot me a look that haunts me to this day. She professed her fear of the dark, with tears running down her cheeks and shaking frantically. They were her last words. Nothing poetic or beautiful, just the primal fear of what comes next. None of this could be said to Tom. I recalled an abridged version of events and stuck to the happier path, emphasizing the whimsical imagery. His eyes flirted with tears before completely opening the tap. The only thing I want right now is a hug. Thank you, he blubbers through the tears. He didn't need to thank me, and I emphasized as such. What was he thanking me for? The silly sod. For comforting her as she passed. Him knowing I'd lied to comfort him. Finding my hand on his shoulder made me feel like my father. He'd know something better to say right about now than whatever was about to come out of my mouth. You don't ever need to thank me or apologise for anything. Ever. I love you, no matter what. Nothing will change that. And I'm sorry if you don't want me saying it, but I do. I love you. Okay, he says vacantly. Fair enough. I know when he's off in his own thoughts. Typical. When I pluck up the courage, he's gone. The lights are on, but no one's home. The silence permeated and was nice after a while, not scrounging for something to say or reduced to meaningless phatic talk, just to be there with each other. It doesn't happen a lot, so I needed to appreciate the moment. We almost watched the seasons go by from that bench. I had to hide my smile when I could feel his hand work his way into mine. Thank you. I don't know which one of us needed it more. It felt so foreign yet homely to be experiencing this moment together. Our mouths remained zipped. We didn't need to say anything if he didn't want to. I could feel my feet in the worn leather shoes, and the light breeze which swayed the remnants of the rain off the tops of the trees. It was cold, but the sun was doing its best to battle the puddles and soggy tiles. It almost made the glossy gravestone look like it was crying too. Where do you think you go when you die? Exited Tom's mouth. I didn't really need to think about what I wanted to say. It just flowed out of my mouth like the answer was there all along. Does it matter? We're all so obsessed with what will or won't happen when we pass on that it takes up people's entire lives. The religions and the groups claiming they know the answers are just as wrong as each other, just as they're right. I think whatever comforts you is what happens. It may be different for you than it is for me, or it may be the same. Hopefully I'll see her again, but you never know. What I do know, however, is that I want my body to be next to your mother's, and the rest isn't up to me. The silence returned like it had just been on a coffee break. I wonder what picture of me they'll use at my funeral. When did I look like me? You age constantly, so at what point does someone sit back and say, right, objectively, that's when you looked like you. As a kid, you're too small, not quite there yet. As an adult, you fluctuate through a lot, and then when you're old, you look like an echo of your former self that's been left in the oven too long. I wonder what Tom thinks I look like. At what age was I the most me? More time passed. Maybe the leaves fell. I'm not too sure. It had been months since I'd plucked up the courage to see him again. We almost got into a routine of general chat on the way there, and then radio silence for the rest of the day, especially in the car on the journey home. But today, Dad said something rather profound. Death has clearly been weighing on his mind. Goodness knows how long he's been alone at his place, thinking about it. I wonder how long it takes to come up with different ideas and jump from thought to thought. Is there an idea someone's destined to have if they spend a certain amount of time in a certain place? He stared at the road the entire time he said it, like a blank stare, even with his head tilted towards me. You know what I find odd? He stopped to clear his throat before continuing. The fact that the older and older you get, the less people care, especially in relation to death. I'm not saying it should be vice versa, not in the slightest. It's nice the way it is. I like to reserve my right to be forgotten. I hold that. I own that. It's more an observation. I only bring it up because almost by definition, the younger you are, you've had less of an impact on the world and met less people. I mean, it's clearly the fact that those opportunities have been robbed from them. You're more so mourning the person they could have been, just as much as the person they are. It'll play on my mind for years. What were the exact conditions which made Dad conjure up such a thought? Back at Mum and Dad's place, we cooked tea, or more aptly, Dad cooked it. I wonder if he knows I still can't cook. While we ate, I wanted to turn the television on, but couldn't get it to work. Hopefully he can fix it before Tuesday. "Leave the washing up. I'll do it tomorrow," he said as he rubbed his hands together like a child about to get ice cream before he continued, "Now, let's play some poker." After an hour or so of playing, I was too scared to admit I didn't know the rules, but I'm starting to think he doesn't either. Each time he questions one of my moves, I calmly put it back on him. "Are you sure you've played this before?" The sweet temptation to crack a smile never gets the better of me, although it never subsides. He's too scared of being proven wrong, he simply goes along with it. All until he snapped. "Tom, you can't go fish in poker." Oops. The mood softened again. In true British fashion, I slapped my knees and declared my imminent departure. Dad looked shyly around the table, as if he had something to say, but not quite the confidence to say it. "Tom, please can you tuck me into bed?" As I stepped in through the door, a rush of clarity washed over me. Everything beforehand felt like it was already in the past, even as I was living it. It was history, but in this little room, it felt current, in the moment. Even a room so lost in time made me completely present in my thoughts. Her dried-out mug of tea and open crosswords still sit on her bedside table. Her toothbrush is still in the ensuite. This is the impact of a life. Dad is old-fashioned, so wears a nightcap with the striped pyjamas. All he needs now is a candle to light his way to bed. He tunnels himself into the duvet, so snugly it almost looks sculpted as he fits perfectly into position on the left side. I thought he would have retired to the middle of the bed by now. But no, he still leaves space for her. His arms lay either side of the sheets. "You never used to let me tuck you into bed. There was nothing more I wanted than to read you a bedtime story as we both fell asleep. Oh, I had sleepless nights about it." I know his intention isn't to make me feel guilty, but it is a definite side effect. I put my hand in his and hold it tight. I'd prepared what I was going to say for so long that I didn't even think now was the time to say it. But it was too late. Like pressing play on a pre-recorded message, it already started. "Dad, I love you, and I'm sorry I've never been good at saying that. I hate myself every time I think of it, but I'm sorry I never had kids in time for Mum to meet them, and I'm sorry that even now you're not a granddad. Most of all, I'm sorry—" He interrupts me. Not with words, but with a smile so infectious I already find it on my face. My arm feels weightless as he pulls it towards himself. After softly kissing it, he speaks softer than he ever has before. "I know about him. Always have. I saw your first kiss on our doormat when you were kids, for goodness sake. I am so happy for the both of you." All I ever needed to hear, distilled down into one sentence. After a moment he continued, squeezing my hand as he spoke. "And I love you too." "Maybe you could meet him tomorrow," I said. "Yeah, maybe tomorrow," he replied with a smile so warm, so loving, so homely. We sit in the perfect silence. The arms on the clock continue, as did the cars outside, but we weren't paying attention to that. The world outside continued for hours while we sat there for what felt like minutes. We had our own little vacuum of time and space, just for us. Eventually the time came. Like a butterfly's wings after landing on the perfect flower, his eyelids close. His grip on my hand weakens. Finally, he sleeps. Hold My Hand was written and narrated by Jacob Saul, illustrated by Sonny Layton, and scored by Billy McCormack.